Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning for those who are watching us via internet. It's a pleasure to have you all here in this beautiful sunny Sunday. Yay, finally.
Yeah.
So thank you very much for being here. Today we are going to have a lecture by Isabella, which is called Natural or Divine Law versus Law of Society. But before that, our friend Katarina is going to do the initial reading and the initial prayer. Thank you, Ilana.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
So the message today from Happy Life, Divaldo Franco through Joanna De Angelis says, everywhere, trickery, violence, and crime appears victorious. There are days of folly and calculating evil. There is certainly an avalanche of threatening insanity. But there has been on earth so much love and goodness. Calamity gets more coverage than renunciation, and the scandal gets more than good sense. However, innumerable people believe in and work for their fellow men, working toward an era of happiness. Join these anonymous heroes for good and help and help humankind to be free and happy. Let's close our eyes and be thankful for being here. Raise our thoughts to our mentors who guide us to come here today. As the message says, so much evil are outside, and sometimes it gets harder to follow the path of light. But let's keep in mind that this light is always on for us. We should only raise our thoughts and look for it and try to connect to it. Because in this dark, maybe era, we have a light of path, a path that lights in front of us. And we can follow it and be away from all the negativity and evil that try to reach us out. Let's always raise our thoughts and minds and connect with our good spirits because they're there for us. And together we become stronger when we all function that way. Coming here is a step towards that light. And I thank you, and we should thank each other for being here because we are together building a stronger path of that light. Let's elevate our thoughts to our friend Isabella, who's going to give her speech today. She's starting her individual path in light. It's her first speech. So let's raise our thoughts for her. And thank you, and let's everybody have a wonderful time here. And so be it.
Hi everyone, my name is Isabella. I've been coming here since 2016 when I first moved to Toronto, so it's such an honor to be here. So I'm super excited for this lecture. Thank you for having me. And the theme today is natural or divine law versus law of society, which is pretty much the law of the spiritual life versus the law that we have here, and some differences because it's very obvious that it's not the same law. So first, so my sources are the Spirit's book and Heaven and Hell. So you see that this is the number of the question on the Spirit's book, just for reference. So what is the natural law? So it's the law of God. So and then shows what you should do or should not do, all your wrongs and mistakes or imperfection would cause some kind of misfortune or pain. And so where is the God law written? In your conscience. So we always know what's the right thing to do. Sometimes we don't want to think about it, but we know. So since growing up, like as a kid, like you know what's the right thing to do, but sometimes you challenge your parents, you challenge yourself. So let's just test my parents, that just test like people around me to see how they're gonna react, but I know what it's right. And even if we try to rationalize our choices, we kind of know inside what's the right thing to do. So has God endowed certain individuals with the mission of revealing the divine law? Of course, there are certain individuals in every age throughout history that they have this mission to bring this law of God to us. And the number one example is Jesus, which is the perfect standard that God has offered us to guide us and model. But we can think about many saints and not through other religions, other guides, spiritual leaders that had this knowledge, and they were trying to bring this idea, and it was trying to tell us what's the law of God, that it's so different from what we have here with the law of society. So Jesus is the perfect standard, the perfect spirit that our number one reference. He was animated by a divine spirit and has the purest light, the most pure spirits that have been on earth. And the law of God is all about love and charity. That's anything that deviates from love and charity, it goes against the law of God. So we have the divine laws and the moral laws. So divine laws as also the laws of nature, including science, and we also have the moral laws, the laws of the body and soul. So one good question was, can you master both laws, the laws of nature and the laws of matter, including science? And the answer was yes, but a single existence is not enough to do so. So eventually we're gonna get there. We're gonna understand science because we understand so little of it, plus divine laws, plus all the laws that we have. But we're gonna take more existences, more incarnations to do so. But we're gonna get there. So what's morality? So it's the rule of good conduct. So it's just knowing what's good and evil. So to obey God's law is to do everything for the good of all. So think less about yourself and more about the others. And how to distinguish what's good and evil. Do to others what you want them to do to you. So just that Jesus said, like, do to your neighbors what you wanted them to do to you. And that's clear, and it's the same law for everyone. That's no God doesn't create different laws for different people or different worlds. It's the same law for everyone. So knowing what's in your conscience plus what you wanted to do to you, then you have a clear understanding. But what if people like to be treated differently, and maybe they want to be treated in a different way, and that you want to, like, how are we gonna know how to treat the others? I think it's communication. Just ask, like, what you want. Ask them how they want to be treated, and then like you get more clear on that. So natural law outlines for all humans the limit of their needs, and then if they exceed that limit, they are punished by suffering. So natural law is, for example, any kind of excess. If you eat too much, if you drink too much, of course you're gonna feel sick, and that's a natural consequence. It's not that God is saying, "Oh my God, you're gonna be punished because you ate too much. I'm gonna create a law for you right now. You're gonna be punished." It's so natural. So if you ate too much, you felt sick, and anything that you do that deviates from God's law, there is a natural consequence, but that's not an individual punishment that was created by someone. It's just the law of nature of that wrong. So if you always listen to your voice that says enough, then you can avoid most of the ills they accuse nature of. So again, back to your conscience. Any time that you are doing something that you feel that's not right, then you feel that's enough. And if you follow that conscience, you might probably gonna be avoiding the worst that's to come. And on that as well, so it's before Jesus, other religions and other philosophies, they kind of had this understanding as well. So if you look back to philosophy, Greek philosophy, you kind of get a little bit of a morality laws. So it's not only Jesus, it's being all over all kind of cultures and countries. So this is it's bigger than just Christianity. This goes to other religions as well. And as I mentioned, God's law is the same for everybody. And the level of evil depends on the willingness that one has to do so. So if we get punished for evils, we also get rewarded for the good qualities that we have, our virtues. And that level of evils depend on how much you really want to do it. So sometimes you make a mistake and you cause somebody to feel bad or you hurt somebody else, but sometimes that's actually an accident. You didn't want that to happen, and that's considered versus if you plan wrongdoing, if you plan something to happen to somebody. So that there is the degree of responsibility that's really important for how you're going to be punished by it. I don't like to say punished because it feels that that's like a parent like punishing the kid. I feel like that's a consequence. So the level of consequence is related to your level of responsibility and the understanding that you have of how the law of God works. So some people don't believe in God and they don't understand everything that we're talking about, but other people know that. So I feel that as Spiritism, we have a high level of understanding. There is a higher level of responsibility that we have because we know. Just like kids, like the older they are, they know more about what they're doing, so they should be more or less responsible for it. So as I'm saying that to you, your level of responsibility increases, so be careful. It's all about that. It also says that evil is no less evil by being necessary. By being necessary, it's just that society thinks some kind of evil is necessary. If somebody offends you, society thinks you have to offend back. So is that really necessary? I mean, that's the wars that we go through, right? Like they get attacked, they attack again, and that escalates, and then it gets to that situation. So there is no evil that's necessary. There is always a different way to deal with the situation. So we should not think that I'm doing this because I was forced to do it, because we're not forced to anything, right? There is always a way to deal with it. So evil is no less evil by being necessary, but this necessity disappears as the soul purifies itself in passing from one existence to another. So as Jesus was offended, and then of course he didn't offend back, he just went through teaching this lesson to us that we should not do the same that others do to us when it's any kind of evil. So this is the same as, for example, as in a war, the soldiers and captains. So the captains, let's say in an example, they plan something that it's maybe not necessary, maybe attacking civilians, doing something that is a war crime or anything like it. And there is the captain that plans it, and then the soldiers. So in this case, the captain gets more responsibility because he's planning that, and the soldier is executing. There is, of course, responsibility in executing, but this person didn't plan. So it's just executing. So there are different levels of responsibilities in that sense. Similar to how our law system works. So if you plan it or if you just execute it, there is different kind of responsibilities. So the responsibility for evil falls upon the one that has created it all. All will suffer the penalty, not only for the evil they have done, but also for the evil they have caused. And also when there is something good that you should have done and you haven't done it, there is also, you miss the opportunity, so there is also a consequence for it. So sometimes a friend asks for help and you say no, so you're just thinking, I have no debt because I didn't do anything, but you did because you were faced with the opportunity to do good and you didn't just because you didn't want to, but you could have done. So in this case, any opportunity to do good that we don't do it, it's also, there's a consequence for it, and different levels as well. So in order to be pleasing to God? Is there simply enough not to do what is evil? So if we don't do anything evil, is that enough? Of course not, because we have to do good to the best of our abilities. For all we will answer for all the evil that has suffered, from the good they have left undone. So all the good left undone, we're gonna be facing consequences as well. And there is another interesting question. Is the desire for evil as reprehensible as evil itself? That depends. So there is virtue in willingly resisting the desire for evil if one desires to commit it. So let's say if you're acting on your instincts and you're always like being very irresponsible and acting on the first thought of evil, and then you start to resist the urge, so then there's merit. However, if only it's the opportunity that did not present itself, then the person is culpable. So we should always reprehend our thoughts, that our bad thoughts, they're telling us to do bad things. But if it's only because the opportunity is not there, there's not that much merit because of it. So if you're resisting that kind of thoughts, always think that there is something reprehensible about it, but it could be improvement from where you were before if you were acting on that previously. So there is always a merit to not do bad things if there shows an improvement on your behavior. And another interesting question is, what about the people that are in a path to, they're doing bad things, but that's only because of the environment that they are in, crime and vice. So they were born in an environment that is really tough. They went through situations that not everyone goes through, and because of that, they went into vice and they went into crime because of the environment. And if it wasn't for the environment, maybe they wouldn't be in crime and vice. So the answer is, so this is a result of a trial they have chosen by their spirit in the state of freedom. And the spirit wanted to expose itself to temptation to get the merit of resisting it. So in this situation, so the spirit has chosen to be in that situation, to be tempted by that vice or criminal activities, to get the merit of resisting, but sometimes they can't. Sometimes they think they are able to, and that because of that, they're not able, because even people in that surroundings, sometimes they're able to do good and not going to crime and not going to vices. So we see from the same environment, we get people that are able to have a great life. Of course, it's hard. They have such an incredible merit to come out of that situation, but other people can't. So we should not just blame the environment. There is always the spirit that is maybe have chosen to be there and thinking they would resist, they couldn't. So we should always have that mentality in regards to spirits that are suffering because of what they have done. It relates to all of us. So spirits that are suffering, all of us are suffered or suffering in any way. And the mentality is not that, oh my God, the spirit's suffering, so let's just leave it there suffering because that situation is caused by the actions. That's true, but it's not like they're slave to that suffering. I think the mindset should be they are patients, and just like in a hospital, let's care, let's help them and give all the tools to make the suffering less intense. So it's always helping. So we should always help anyone that we see suffering instead of just thinking, oh, that person is the result of all the action. So let's just leave it there. Always think about helping, because we need help, of course, to go through our life. And what's the merit in doing good? So the merit lies in difficulty. There is no merit in doing good if there is no self-denial or if it costs nothing. So some people think they are so charitable because they're donating their used clothes. So, I mean, that's cost nothing. There's nothing about it. I mean, it's just good for you. They're gonna have your closet space more organized. So, I mean, there is no I mean, there's some good in it, but it doesn't cost you anything. It's not like no self-denial, so there's not much merit in it. But if maybe instead of doing that, you could also do that, but on top of that, you could maybe donate money or help people in need, or volunteer and help homeless people, for example. So that's, you're putting your time, you're putting your resources, and maybe your time is even more valuable than your money, because maybe you have a lot of money and it doesn't mean anything to you, but your time is very valuable. So if you're putting your time, it means a lot. So it's all about self-denial and what cost to you. And there is an interesting parable of the widow's mite. Mite was like the coin at the time. So there was a widow in a temple that Jesus was there, and the widow put 2 coins donating to the temple, and it was the only 2 coins that she had. So she gave everything. There is nothing else. Like, she didn't have anything to eat or nothing for the future, only 2 coins, and she gave to the temple. And Jesus was mentioning that donation was the number one, like the most important donation they have received, because the other people, the elite at the time, they were giving lots of resources and money, but they had so much of it, so it didn't mean anything for them. It's just a way of showing off, in a sense. But for that widow in that moment was the number one act of self-denial, and costed everything to her. So that's how we measure merit. Perfect. So we talked about the law of God. So let's talk a little bit about the law of society and how it compares versus the law of God. So humans must progress, and they cannot do it alone. They need contact with others. So in isolation, they become brutish and withered. So we need each other to complement our skills, and we can only evolve as society if we are with each other. So it's and also they talk about isolation and absolute seclusion. Some people think that isolation is good for you for some reason. That you can learn from isolation for a short period of time, but you cannot just live by yourself. You're not going to evolve if you are just living by yourself forever, because there is no one to learn from or teach. So you're not going to face the challenges that you should face in order to evolve if you just live in isolation and seclusion. So the book says that it's selfish. Doing mostly good rather than evil is the best expiation. Through such seclusion, they avoid one evil to fall into another, since they neglect the law of love and charity. So if you live by yourself, like isolated from the whole world, how are you going to practice the law of charity and the law of love? It's really hard. So we need each other. We need to live in society to do that. So that's the law of progress, comparing the state of nature, which is the primitive state, the infancy of the human state, and that's a transitory state, versus the natural law, which is rules mankind as a whole, constant improvement through social contact, and that's how we get our development. And this image on the right is from the movie Nosso Lar. And I always think it's almost not perfect society, but it's much more evolved than the Earth. So that's the march of progress. We are progressing as a society, as a whole planet. And we cannot stop the march of progress, but it could slow it down. And a lot of people think we are not improving, as we heard on the lecture, that so much evil, so many wars going on, and sometimes it feels like everything is getting worse, like inflation and like the standard of living, and so many homeless people on the streets. But let's just think about the progress that we have done as a society through the last few centuries. So just some stats that I find really interesting. So let's think about poverty versus 200 years ago. 200 years ago, 75% of the whole world was in extreme poverty. And today it's only 11. 11's a lot, but I mean, look at this progress in 200 years. And life expectancy, I find this mind-blowing. Life expectancy in the 1900s, early 1900s, was 32 years old. 32 years old. That's my age, and I was shocked when I saw it. Like, oh my God, if I was born like a century ago, like my life would be, I was thinking about it, like what would be the life of a woman in that time? So so a woman's born, so she goes through childhood, and then she's forced to get married, and then she's gonna have like kid after kid after kid after kid, and then she dies. And I'm not even meeting their grandkids. So that was the life that could have been my life, or maybe it was my life previously. But like, look at my life now. Like my life expectancy, like the average in the world is now 73 years old, much higher here in the developed countries. But like, look at the difference. Like I have choices now. And a few years ago, like so many of us wouldn't have much. So that's crazy, that the evolution, we're evolving. I know there is a lot of problems and there's so much to improve, but we are slowly getting there. For example, nowadays we talk about animal rights. Like, imagine thinking about that like 40 years ago. Like, this is crazy. This could never happen. But we're getting there slowly. So Earth is transitioning to a higher level of development, and even the new spirits, the new kids that are born here, they're slightly higher level of development, and you see how they behave, and it seems like they're sometimes a bit more mature and more developed than, because the Earth is going through that path. And the march of progress is regular and slow. So that's why sometimes we feel that we are regressing, but we are improving. However, when a culture does not advance quickly enough, from time to time, God causes a physical or moral jolt, and that transforms it. So sometimes there is a revolution, sometimes there is a natural, like a tsunami or earthquake to help transform it. So it's something that we never understand exactly why it happens, but that's a way to go through that, just like COVID. We don't know exactly why, but we know it's something that helps the planet evolve as well. So what's the greatest obstacle to progress? Pride and selfishness. So that's very clear, and all your wrongdoings or your mistakes, most likely it's going to come from pride and selfishness as well. And there are two differences: the intellectual progress and the moral progress. They technically should evolve together, but it could be sometimes intellectual progress could deviate from moral progress, as we have a lot of very intelligent people, they have zero morals. So that could happen as well if they develop excess ambitions and the love of wealth. So then it's somebody that could have been in a great progression through progress, but they deviated, and then it's not what we were supposed to. But in general, it should go together. As we get more intelligent as a whole, we should improve our morals as well. So what's a complete and perfect civilization? So number one, moral development, little brothers and sisters, practicing Christian charity, where the least selfishness, cupidity, and pride are found. Christians are more intellectual and moral than material, and there is more kindness, good faith, reciprocal benevolence, and generosity, where the weak always find support against the strong, where the persons of goodwill are always sure that they lack no minimum of what is needed to live on. When I saw that, I was like, oh, so this is a strong argument about the minimum wage or the minimum income. That's very controversial, but it's like when I saw that, oh, everyone needs the basic to live on. That's clear. And that's another really interesting question. It's how is Spiritism influence on progress of the world? And of course, Spiritism brings all this knowledge to us, which is very clear through the books of Kardec and all the spirits books. So a question that it's I always asked when I was studying Spiritism in the beginning was, why don't Spiritists speed up the process and just have material effects happening all the time? So it's going to be really easy for everyone to believe. So instead of doing a lecture, why don't we levitate this table? So we prove everyone that spirits are here and the spirit world is real. So the answer is, you desire miracles, but God has sown so-called miracles by the handful right under your feet. Yet you have people who deny them. So even if that was happening right now, some people would deny it. It's not enough. And it's not by miracles that God guides humanity. So if we could do that and levitate, a lot of people would believe it. So there is no much merit in it. It's just like gravity. You don't say, I believe in gravity. I'm such a gravity believer, because there is no merit. Of course, it's gravity. Like it's proven, it's science. So you don't get anything from it. But there is God wants to be a merit in believing in God and believing in the development of the human planet. So out of divine goodness, God wishes to leave it to the merit of being convinced through reason. So that's why most of the Spirit Center, they wouldn't have anything public. That it's even through the medianistic sessions, most of the times it's not public because we don't want it to be like entertainment. So that's very clear. We don't want for people to go just to be entertained and not have that moral internal reformation that needs to happen for you to evolve. And this is really interesting as well. What's the difference in repentance, expiation, and reparation? Seems similar, but what is the difference? So let's go with an example. Let's say a teenager. I'm sure all of us argued with our parents at some point. So let's say a teenager is arguing with the parents. Repentance, and this teenager, in this example, he said something really hurtful, besides the point of the argument, just hurtful just for the sake of like offending their parents. I'm sure all of us were in this situation once in a lifetime. So repentance is sincere regret or remorse. So this teenager, after saying that, they felt like, oh my God, like what did they say? Like should I have said it? So after a while, it's gonna, if it's not right away, this person normally feels that sense of regret. And why is important? Because it's often the rigors of expiation, because awakens the hopes and prepare for rehabilitation. And that's even in our justice system, I think the judge tried to understand if the person has regretted or not. Because some criminals, maybe they never have, they don't regret it at all. And they felt was like, I did it because I wanted to do it and that's it. So I think this goes into effect when the judge is thinking about the penalty. So if the person has repentance, it's gonna soft the way through the consequence. So the first step is repentance. Expiation is the physical and mental sufferings as of a natural consequence. It could be in the current lifetime or in the spirit life once you discarnate, or in a later corporeal existence. So the expiation, if it doesn't happen now, it's gonna come later, that's for sure. So in this case of the expiation in that sense, so the teenager felt regrets, but he was also feeling really down about it. He was crying and thinking like all the consequences, and there could be a consequence from the parents as well, like forcing the kid like to be grounded or something like that. But then the most important thing as well is the reparation. So it's righting a wrong that has been done to somebody. It can annul the effect and destroy the cause. Otherwise, forgiveness would be an act of grace alone and not an annulment of the wrong. So in this case, what could have done the teenager could have done? They could say sorry to their parents. It has to be genuine. It has to come from the heart. And maybe sorry is not enough. So maybe the teenager would have to think how he can repair the situation and say, like, I'm sorry, like I should have said that it came from a place that I just went to. It doesn't feel true to me. And maybe have to think more ways of how to connect better with the parents so that doesn't happen again. So these are the 3 steps to correct the wrongs, and this applies to all wrongs that we can think, all our mistakes. Just thinking that reparation, just saying sorry, it could be, sometimes it's not enough. Sometimes you feel that you have done all you could, but the person still feels it's not enough. But that's the process. So what's the penal code? And I don't like to say penal code because it feels like it's all about punishments, but it's just for the sake of the understanding of the spiritual life. So suffering is inherent to imperfection, just like every quality or virtue acquired is a source of blessedness and attenuation of the suffering. So any mistake is going to cause a natural consequence, just like the virtues that you acquire, it's going to help you work through that consequence. So every imperfection or wrong brings its own punishment with natural and inevitable consequences. Just like the sickness from excess, when you eat too much, when you drink too much, or the bored when you were lazy and you spend all day doing nothing, at some point it's going to be bored. You're going to get bored. So it's a natural consequence, minimal, but still it's a consequence. And anyone can treat the imperfection by their will and ensure the future happiness. So if you're treating your imperfections and you know yourself and you know what imperfections you have, it's going to be much easier. So that's all about self-knowledge. And I think that if you think about all the challenge that you went through life, maybe you can find a theme. So maybe it's financial challenges, maybe it's like romantic challenges or any other kind of challenge. And you can think hard about what does it teach me? Like why I'm going through challenge that are similar in a way, but what should I have to learn through this? And if you think hard about that, you might get to a point that you can correct that, and then you're gonna realize the challenges are gonna soften a little bit, and maybe don't fix the challenge anymore. But you have to think hard about like what is the imperfection that I have that maybe I don't want to admit to myself, but I've seen this come over and over again, and it has to teach me something. It has a reason for it to come again many times. And if you do this exercise, you might get to a better stage. And another way of saying that's to each according to his or her deeds in heavens as well as on earth. That's such the law of divine justice. So in the spirit's life, the soul or spirit suffers the consequences of all the imperfections that could not be corrected during its corporeal life. So again, like we should try as much as possible to correct everything that we have done in this life, because in this life we know what we have done wrong. Like we don't know about the past lives, but this life we know. So like we have our life to correct it and go through the process, repentance, expiation, and reparation. And if we do that, we are softening our debts and making sure that we're not carrying higher debts to the next life. And the amount of punishment or consequence is proportional to the amount of imperfection, just as joy is proportional to soul's good qualities. And hell, there is we don't like the dimension when we say hell, just like it's heaven and hell, it's just like binary. There is no in between. Hell doesn't even exist, but is the mental place where the suffering souls are, and heavens is where the joyous and happy souls are. So it's just a mental space. You can be in heaven or in hell even when you are incarnated. It's just where your mind is. And I have a story about how you can reduce our debts in your current lifetime. So there is a story that I heard on a lecture on a spirit center. It was about a man, retired man that was working on the Spirit Center every day throughout his life. He was very dedicated. He's the person that was there every day because it was a big Spirit Center, but so they have activities like throughout the day, every day. So this man dedicated his life to Spiritism, to charity, to everything. He was there every day helping the community. He has done so much. And everyone thought really highly of him, like this person's great, this person, like, I'm sure this person is like very evolved. One day he was doing some work on his yard and he was working through like a saw and he sawed one finger. And when that happened, like everyone was shocked, like, oh my God, how this person could deserve this? Like he dedicated his whole life to charity, like this should not have happened. So and there was later exposed to one of the mediums that worked in the Spirit Center that this man in past life, he had slaves and he cut the arm of a slave. And he should have lost his arm as well. But because of all the merits that he got in the current life, all the work he's put in, he only lost a finger. So this story, like I keep this, every time something bad happens to me, I think about this. So I'm losing a finger today, not the arm. So I always think about this, and every time a friend comes with a problem, I think this could be your finger. Just think about that. It could be much worse, but it's only that. Through all the risk that we put ourselves and all the decisions that we make, it could be just a finger. So that's how we reduce our debt in the current life. So that's exactly what I just said. Like we can deduce the nature of the wrongs committed in the previous existence and the imperfections that caused them. So just looking through what you have been through your life and the challenge, you can deduce what is your main imperfections and what you have to learn in that lifetime. And the duration of the punishment also depends on how much the good spirits improve itself. So if you do a lot of good, you can reduce the consequences. And these are some consequences that are explained in the book. What happens if the spirit is too attached to the materialistic life? So a common consequence throughout the passing is the slowness from which the separation of the body and soul happens when the person dies, along with anguish and confusion. So the person is so attached to the material life that the spirit doesn't want to go through the spirit's life, so it's attached to the body. Another situation, the spirit's not morally evolved to a certain degree. So sometimes they believe they're still alive, experiencing the needs and torments of the physical life. If the person is addicted to a substance, the spirit's gonna still feel the need to have that substance. That's something that happens. And criminals, it's the incessant presence of the victims and their circumstances of the crimes as a cruel torment. So it's some of the consequences that could happen when you have a debt and you have so much of a debt that it could impact your spiritual life. So sufferings are related to the evil practices, and the solution is repentance and the desire for reparation. Even if you haven't done the reparation yet, I think the start is to desire it and you start planning how that's gonna occur. And even if you don't have, like, you don't do 100% of the reparation, you just try to go slowly and get the opportunities to do so until maybe you're gonna be faced with an opportunity to do it. So the desire for reparation brings enough tranquility to see the possibility of putting an end to the situation through their own efforts, in the case of these most suffering spirits. So what can we do? Repair all the wrongs from this life in this life. That's ideal. So there's nothing left to be repaired later. So we, of course, ideally we come through this life with paying our debts and putting in the most good that we can. So when we disincarnate, we feel a little bit better than we were when we first incarnated. And the longer reparation for a wrong, is postponed, the more painful and harsh its consequences will be in the future. So if you're ignoring imperfection or something wrong that you have done, like, the consequences are increasing. So it's better to start with the process right away. And this is the last quote that it's very relevant. Blessed are the afflicted, for they shall be comforted. So if you're feeling afflicted, you're paying, most likely you're paying a debt, so that's good. So it could be just a finger, as I mentioned. And that's it.
Thank you so much, Isabella. Any comments, questions? Nothing from the internet?
I would say two things. First, it's like just mimic what you just said, actually. That pain, we always think, oh, I have to pay this debt, right? We don't think about the debt. We just say, we are paying, right? Paying is bad. But we are paying a debt, and that has to be paid, right? So it's like, I always think this way when you pay your taxes, and it's a big cut, oh my God. But it's like it's on everything in life, right? When you are passing through a challenge part of your life, I try to think that way that you said. The second thing, it's like that you said, you mentioned about moral laws, you mentioned about society laws, right? But one of them, it's forever, doesn't change. The other changes a lot. So when you're talking about society and evolution, I was thinking about all the evolutions of our laws, actually. You mentioned about the Hammurabi Code, right? One eye for an eye. If we start that way, I think was Chico Xavier who mentioned that, or someone mentioned that. I don't want to put words on his mouth, but it's like if you do that, everybody gonna be blind at one point, right? Because so the society law, they change. And part of that, it's in our evolution to help us to evolve, right?
Yeah, that's a good point. Imagine like eye for an eye, and then everyone's getting the same debts and that and that and that.
Yeah,
Like, yeah, it's not sustainable.
I just want to share a couple of things that stick to me. First is we should be doing good because we bring our talents, right? So it's no point not doing anything, and we all can do something. Again, just mimicking what he said, it's our responsibility to use what we have to do something good. So staying in a flat line in a zero will not add anything. And we know, again, that the conscience that we have since as a child. Last week, I was organizing stuff to make a cake. My child comes, he's 5, and he tells me, "Mommy, my brain's telling me to make a big mess here, but I'm not going to do it."
There we go.
That's the perfect example. My brain's telling me to make a mess, but I'm not going to do it. So we know since we're little what's right and what's wrong. So hopefully you can.
Yeah, and I think we have to pay attention as well. I think excellent point, right? But we have to pay attention because for us to be here, for me to be here, there is a line of, I don't know the number, a long number of spirits that wish to be here.
Mhm.
And to be here, it's a blessing. So there is a line, guys.
Mhm, mhm.
It's like the population of Earth won't increase from 8 billion to 25 billion tomorrow in a few years. So there is a line to be here. And because there is a line, you have to take this not as granted, but as obligation to fulfill or to fulfill the maximum you can your plan and to do good.
Yeah. Very good, Isa.
Yeah.
Good job.
Thank you. Great job. So thank you, everybody. Thank you for those who are watching us through the web. Now we are going to prepare for our passes. So for those who watched us online, if you have the opportunity, please do final prayer, and we wish you all an amazing and blessed week ahead. Okay, see you again next Sunday. Thank you.